The UConn women are coming off a resounding win against Iowa State. But what's the true state of the program? Come find out on Locked On UConn. Next.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. We are free and available. We're at your podcast and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Before we dive into today's show, just want to take a moment to say thank you to everyone that's supporting the podcast, whether you love the men or the women or both. Everybody is contributing, and I love it. It's the only daily podcast covering both the UConn men's and women's basketball, the true basketball capital of the world, and we're thrilled to bring you the coverage because you deserve it. So to show that gratitude, this is even more of a reason why you should back us. We're donating 10% of our revenue to Husky Ticket Project. That's an organization that helps send kids in underserved areas to UConn games when they probably otherwise couldn't do it. It's a great time. Men's, women's basketball. They did football. I think they're sending kids to baseball games this spring. So if you're enjoying the show, take a moment to subscribe, follow, and leave a review wherever you listen. That helps us. Thanks again for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Okay, well, we welcome back T. Baker, a writer for The Next Hoops and a basketball scout for Prep Girls, or basketball scout for Prep Girls Hoops. I can't talk today. T, let's bring you on and unmute your mic. Let's go. How you doing, my man? Look, we're talking about this program every day, and I have some folks that think we're in great shape, and then I have the doomsdayers that are like, the sky is falling because we lost Notre Dame. What do you think of the state of UConn women's basketball, December 20th, 2024?
Yeah. Hey, Mark, thanks for having me. And I appreciate the question. I think, growing up in Connecticut, seeing a team that has just such unrealistic success, I think you see the doomsdayers, maybe more so than any other program in the country. I think UConn is where it's always been. It's just in a changing context. UConn is one of the elite programs in the country. I think that what has changed is that women's basketball isn't quite as top heavy as it used to be. There used to be maybe 3 or 4 teams that could compete and actually beat the Huskies. But now the talent is just so much more decentralized. And so I think when we think about the state of the program, we have an elite program in UConn. And I think that what has shifted and what brings out the doomsday and the, fire Gino, whatever, all these things you see on the internet, Gino's washed, whatever, is that the other teams have caught up. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's a good thing. And I think that it means that, the grassroots girls basketball has evolved. There's more good coaching and really the game has grown.
The ironic thing about what you just said about Gino is he's a big reason why it's gotten better, because he has talked about his blueprint, and people have essentially, him and Chris Daly, and essentially making the investments in programs. There's more opportunity for better coaches to get involved in women's sports. So that to me is it's almost like the gift and the curse, right? You want to see the game grow and be better, but it also has probably negated a few extra championships on his side. So I actually think it's incredibly selfless of him to see the vision of where women's basketball is going. And I hate to deify him. I'm not saying he's a saint. Gino's got his faults and he's got his pros and cons, but he's a big reason why women's basketball is where it is now. And leads me to my next question. How many teams do you think can win a national championship? This was something that just sparked that in me. Like in today's game, is there 8, 10, 6? What do you think?
I mean, I think that what used to be maybe, a really hyper elite group of maybe like 5 or 6 programs that could reasonably win a national championship is probably expanded to 12 to 16. There's just so much talent, like I mentioned, and there's so much movement of that talent. Obviously, the transfer portal has made a huge difference. Like we're talking about USC today, brought in Kiki Arifin, brought in Talia and Talia Olalfin. I can't say her name right.
Take your time. I'm the worst at pronouncing names.
But, bringing in that transfer talent means that you don't have to wait to have that sort of like incubation development period anymore in basketball and college basketball. So I think it's harder than ever for like the AP poll to predict who's going to be good, because every year is like a new roster, and every year has new talent that already has college basketball experience. It's not just like we're relying on freshmen and by the time they're juniors, seniors, that team is competitive. It's that right away you can fill those gaps in your resume with elite talent and compete.
Okay, you can't say Sarah Strong. Which player do you think has stepped up the most in the absence of Azzi Fudd with her knee sprain? And even to an extent, we haven't seen Ayanna Patterson. She just obviously had a season-ending surgery to her shoulder. The gaps of they have some depth, but there's some gaps there. Which player do you think has stepped up outside of Sarah, who is otherworldly? We'll get to her later.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on which games you're talking about. I think it's been a little bit of like filling the gaps in the games we saw. Obviously, Ashlynn Shade had struggled really significantly in Notre Dame. She's a kid from Indiana, might have been a little shaken up. The pressure of the moment might have gotten to her. But then we saw her the other night, and she was just a bucket. Like shows that talent she has, the shooting prowess. So I would say her as if we're looking at Iowa State as the reference point. But then I think we've seen some growth from Morgan Cheli as well in terms of just being like that Swiss Army knife, that big wing that Gino and CD in the UConn program always really like to utilize, players who can kind of shoot, pass, rebound, and can really stretch the length of the court a little bit at her size. So I would say that Ashlynn Shade and Morgan Cheli have kind of been those two that I think have filled that gap a little bit in terms of that wing player that is missing with Azzi on the bench.
Yeah, I think you're correct. The only player I would add to that mix is I think, and she's an older player, is I think Caitlyn Chen has been kind of like Gino's. They use a funny term, people have the Calm app. I think that's his like Calm app, that he knows that when he puts her out there, she's not gonna go for 30 like Ashlynn did the other day, but she's also not going to turn it over, and she's going to be have a steady hand. Yeah.
It's kind of like the comp could be like Nika Mule from last season, right? Maybe not the same defensive intensity, but someone who you can rely on. Nika would sometimes get in foul trouble or have some turnovers, get in her head a little bit, but I think it's that same calming presence at the point guard. And that's another benefit of the transfer portal, frankly, is that he gets a player who's developed 4 years in a Princeton program under former UConn player Carla Berube. There's this pipeline of talent that in the past teams couldn't access as much with the transfer rules. And now you have a grad student who's got experience in the NCAA tournament, got experience playing at the high level. And that's what Caitlyn Chen brings to the team.
Absolutely. Well, when we return, we're going to get into that USC preview with T. Baker coming up after this. Have you ever looked at your bank statement and found charges for subscriptions you forgot or didn't even realize you had? I know I have. And that's where Rocket Money came to the rescue. It's like having your own personal finance assistant. Rocket Money found these sneaky subscriptions and canceled them for me in just a few taps. Rocket Money isn't just about canceling subscriptions. It's a personal finance app that helps you take control of your money. Whether it's finding and canceling unwanted subscriptions, monitoring your spending, or even lowering your bills, Rocket Money brings everything together in one great place. With over 5 million users and 500 million saved in canceled subscriptions, Rocket Money members save up to $740 a year using the app's premium features. For me, the subscription tracker has been a game changer. I've canceled a few services I wasn't even using anymore, and I've saved so much money, and I've used their goals feature app. It's helped me automatically set aside money for the future without stressing things like vacation, stuff like that. Take control of your finances with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Don't let those unwanted subscriptions drain your wallet. Start saving money today. The holidays are a perfect time to create lasting memories with people you care about. For me, there's nothing better than sharing the joy of live events this season. I'll never forget taking my family to a basketball game last December down here at North Carolina. And it wasn't just about the game. It was about being together and just having a fun time, making memories. We talk about that to this day. Game Time is all about togetherness. This holiday season, there are new Game Time picks feature makes it easier than ever to find incredible deals on the best seats. It filters out the fluff, so you're not only seeing top-tier seats at unbeatable prices, but you're also doing it in an easy, slick app. Whether it's a concert, comedy show, or a big game, Game Time Picks has you covered. I checked out a few games for friends because a lot of times if I don't take my family, I get to go to games for free because I'm a member of the media. So I get a lot of family and friends the lowest price guarantee because that's what Game Time offers. They take the guesswork out of ticket buying, no more scalping tickets. They have you covered even with event cancellation protection if you're doing a concert, job loss assurance, so you can buy with confidence. Ready to make this holiday season unforgettable? Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. That's right, $20 off. Terms may apply. Again, download the Game Time app today, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege to save. What time is it, y'all? It's game time. All right. I'm kind of tired of hearing my own voice, but we're back on Locked On UConn here with T. Baker, beat reporter, women's basketball expert extraordinaire. Want to talk to you about USC. I think to me, this is the game. Everyone circles Notre Dame on their schedule when we're talking about UConn. But outside of that, this was another game that I thought, man, if we can win both of them, we obviously lost Notre Dame. We'd be in really good shape. But if you can win one, then I feel like gives the team some confidence. As you know, they've beaten some good, decent teams. North Carolina was ranked; they were pretty good. I don't think they're an elite program yet. They're on the rise. Iowa State, same thing. I think Iowa State just ran into a buzzsaw. Anytime you hit 23s, it's just it doesn't matter who you play. But a win against this USC team led by JuJu Watkins, what would that mean to this program?
Well, I think it would mean that the younger pieces on UConn's roster are gelling to some extent. I mean, these two teams matched up in the Elite Eight last season. UConn had a single-digit game to advance to the Final Four. I think that it's really one of those games that is a good, relatively early season test measuring stick. And USC just has a lot of talent, but it's still at the point of putting those pieces together. I think, there's new transfers, like we mentioned, Kiki Ierafin, Talia von Oelhoffen, and then, you have Rhea Marshall in the post, JuJu Watkins as the dynamic player that she is. So there's a lot of talent on both sides, but really it comes down to this is a measuring stick for which team has been able to put together that new talent at this point in the season. And I think that's what we're going to see, Saturday night in Hartford. And I think the other thing is it's in Hartford. So we can see, you come and defend home court, show up and really step up to that challenge.
Yeah, I honestly think it would be a blow psychologically to this team if they lose at home to a team that they just beat in the Elite Eight. Although I get it, there's new players on both sides. I don't know anything yet about if. Probably we'll find out probably later today. We're recording this around 1:00 on Friday, and this will come out on Saturday morning. So I'm curious about if Azzi plays. Obviously, I don't think she will. That's just my gut feeling on it. No, there's no update, so don't take my word on that. But if they can't defend home court, I think that would kind of do a little something like, hey, we can't really beat a good team yet. Like we just haven't, right? And so what are the keys to victory, do you think? Like, first question on if we're going to stop or minimize JuJu Watkins, maybe the reverse Hannah Hidalgo, who gets that assignment? Is that Paige, or are they going to rotate?
I think that we'll see Paige take on that defensive assignment. I think that against Notre Dame, Paige wasn't really the primary defender on Hannah Hidalgo, and I think that cost them a little bit. Sure. Paige is an elite defender, and I think people forget that, and just the elite offensive player and playmaker that she is. So that would be my guess, but I do think there will be some switching. So Caitlyn Chen and Paige Bueckers, I think between them, maybe when KK Arnold's in the game, she'll get that defensive assignment. I think it'll be some switching and rotating to keep USC on their toes. But JuJu's going to get her points. I think that's the thing with elite players. They find a way to get points. And so it's like, how do we shut down the other parts of the team? How do we make sure we're getting every rebound? We need, folks like Ice Brady to be getting rebounds and to be making defensive stops. I think it's not as much of an offensive assignment as it is doing those things, hitting the glass hard and making sure that you were shutting down in the post so that when JuJu does get those points, it's sort of balanced out by the fact that there's other stops from other players and kind of minimizing the efficiency of the others on the court.
Absolutely. All right. What kind of impact? I think I already know the answer to this question, but I'm going to let you tell our audience. Sarah Strong. We're going to talk a little bit more about her in the next segment with a fun hypothetical, but she didn't. I don't think she struggled against Notre Dame. That's the wrong word. She got into some foul trouble. She looked a little more like human being Sarah Strong and not from this planet Sarah Strong over there in that game against Notre Dame. I think she needs a good game against USC too, so that silly narrative that won't last very long kind of goes away. Do you think she gets it?
I think that she absolutely will show up. I don't think, like you said, against Notre Dame, I don't think it was a bad game as much as it was early foul trouble. The environment. I mean, she's still a freshman, whether or not we believe it. Like, this is new for her. This is just among her first couple of games of college basketball. So I think that she will continue to do what she's done most of the season, which is put up elite numbers, be extremely efficient, and also create some of that pressure in the post. It's not just on Ice Brady or Janelle Alfie. It's like Sarah Strong is really a post presence. She can do so much on the court.
Right.
So if it's not points, it's just the little plays, like I remember in the Notre Dame game, she was kind of running down the court and using her body to sort of block the person in transition. Like, she just has smarts. So do I think she'll have a tremendous impact on the game? Yes. It likely will be on the scoring end because that's what it's been all season. But even if it isn't, there's so many little ways that she uses her basketball IQ to make a difference on the court.
Yeah, she 100% impacts winning more. She could have a night where she scores 7 points and she could be like plus 20 or something like that, analytics wise. So I'm with you there. I tend to think though that I don't think it was more the environment in Notre Dame. I know Sarah's young, and I know I'm giving her like probably way too much credit for her ability right now. I think I'm one of the few that are espousing her as like the next best player in not only UConn history, but maybe basketball. Because I just see this, like, I saw it in person and I see it every night, or even if I'm just listening to it, I love listening to Bob Joyce. Shout out to him. There's something different, and it happened with Paige. You saw it with Maya, and you saw it with Brianna. Like, there's something different about the way Sarah plays. It's hard to quantify, and if I can ever think of it, maybe I'll write about it. I don't know, but it's the way nothing bothers her. I joke around about this. I played professional tennis. There's a great book about Jorn Borg, who they said his resting heart rate was like 40. That nothing, like, everything was, and you could just tell by the way he played. I am the complete opposite. I'm like 140, right? So I always marvel at athletes that have this like stoicism, and she just seems to have that. Comment on that for me, because I need someone to either validate that or call me crazy.
Well, I think when you see someone with that calmness on the court, it means they've prepared. It means that they've put in the hours, and not only does she have talent, but her family grew up in basketball.
Yes.
Like her parents are there. She's been around professional basketball. Like, she knows the ups and downs, and she knows never to get too high or too low, and to know that at a young age is something special. So I think it's a combination of her smarts, her basketball IQ, and the environment she grew up in, and the way her parents have sort of rubbed off on her to be so stoic in that type of environment. I think she knows that, she has the talent, she has the physicality to compete, and she doesn't have any doubts about that because she's prepared. And I think sometimes when you see people who have just put in so much work, it almost looks effortless. And I think, like you said, only a few players in history have that type of impact. And I think Maya was one of them. She wasn't shaken a lot because she was prepared, and she knew that next play, bring it on, and I think Sarah has that quality.
Yeah, it's I know that there's a million examples against this, but I always feel like the scariest people in any sport are the ones who just like, you just like it. They don't talk. Like, it's that, what's that saying? It's always the quiet ones. I think that really kind of crystallizes it. So I appreciate that. On the game itself, what do you think the keys are going to be from from offense and defense. Give me a couple of insights into what we're thinking about. Is it going to be UConn shooting matches up against USC's defense? What's like one or two things that are going to be the absolute critical factors for UConn to secure a win against the Trojans on Saturday night?
I think that for me, I always first go to rebounding. I think rebounding is an effort thing. And when you create more possessions, you're statistically more likely to win a game, right? So I think crashing the offensive glass, that post play is something that I still think needs to be a little shored up for UConn. I think Ice Brady can be a little inconsistent. Jen Alfie, I think they need to be able to do what they need to do well. And that's not points. It's offensive and defensive rebounding and stops. I think as it relates to, shooting, some days you have good nights shooting, some days you have bad nights shooting, but I think it's about getting people in the right position to score. So making sure Paige gets her looks, that Sarah gets her looks, that you're running complex enough offenses where you can switch up who the scorer is. And someone other than those two is going to need to be a scorer. I think that's what we saw in Notre Dame. It can't just be Sarah and Paige. There has to be another contributor. And Gino mentioned in a press conference the other day, it doesn't necessarily mean to be an elite team, UConn is going to need one person to be that third scorer, but every game, someone is going to have to step into that role of being the third scorer. So, I tend to agree with you. I think they're going to play it safe with Azzi and maybe wait till after the new year to bring her back to the court. Yeah. So maybe it's Ashlynn Shade, but I think that the key difference and the X factor is going to be who's that third consistent scorer for UConn.
For sure. All right, when we return, we're going to have a little fun, hypothetical debate. I think my audience has heard this already before about how if Sarah Strong was available in the draft this year, I would pick her one, and I have my reasons. And I think T disagrees with me, but not in before we go to break, people are already telling me, oh, it's so disrespectful to Paige to say that. It's not. I've explained it, and I'll explain it again after this. You know what time of year it is, guys. It is college football playoff time. Are you as excited as I am? Because it's that time of year. The college football playoff is back. And with a newly expanded 12-team format, it's guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports coverage of the college football playoff begins December 21st. That's tomorrow, starting with the college football playoff kickoff. And it's a show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern. Leading into the first matchup, the SMU Mustangs of the ACC battling the Penn State Nittany Lions of the Big Ten at noon. Then the Clemson Tigers, ACC champions, look to upset the SEC, newly formed SEC, Texas Longhorns, in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch the college football playoff presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. Your old pals at home field, as I'm rocking my sweatshirt, calling all the UConn fans. Are you ready to rep these Huskies? Dan Hurley was literally wearing this sweatshirt in a press conference. Look no further than Home Field Apparel, the best in premium collegiate apparel for diehard fans and Hall of Fame coaches. Home Field doesn't just make T-shirts and hoodies. They craft stories with their designs, diving deep into the history and traditions of each school to create a truly unique and nostalgic gear. It also feels great, too. And the best part, we got an incredible selection for us UConn fans, right? Whether you're cheering from the courtside at Campbell Pavilion or watching the game from your couch like I do, Home Field's comfortable and stylish gear will keep you looking and feeling great. I'm rocking their vintage designs all the time. And let me tell you, the compliments just keep coming. People ask me where I got a DM the other day. Hey, where'd you get that white Huskies logo? So I sent the guy the link, and I'm sure he's buying it. So the quality is unmatched. Like we talked about, I've literally worn these head to toe when my wife was giving birth to make sure I was as comfortable as I possibly could to be in a very stressful environment. And an exclusive offer for our Husky fans, Locked On UConn listeners, use the code UConn24 at checkout to get 15% off your first order. 15% off. That's huge. Don't wait. Head to homefieldapparel.com. Find your new favorite piece of Huskies gear and use the promo code UConn24 to save 15%. And if you have someone that, like my wife, that's a Tennessee fan, you can still use UConn24 and get her 15% off if you have someone that likes the other gear that's on the site. Home Field Apparel. Wear one for the team. And on Locked On UConn with T. Baker and your host here, Mark Zanetto. All right. T, I sent you this message a couple days ago because it's just something that I had thought about, because I, a novice to the WNBA rules, had no idea that underclassmen could not be eligible, right? And so someone messaged me and said, you have to be, I think, 23 years old anyway, there's just restrictions where underclassmen can't play, right? So I said, I thought it would be a fun debate if any of these, not just Sarah, but Hannah Hidalgo, JuJu Watkins, were draft eligible. Would we have a different debate about who you're taking at 1? My contention is I take Sarah, not because she's the best player yet, but because she has the biggest upside of everybody. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that I agree with you on that particular argument. What I would say in response, though, is that I don't think the only thing that WNBA GMs consider is on-court talent, to be honest. I think that these are businesses that are trying to create revenue, sell tickets, and Paige Bueckers sells tickets, and she's also an incredible talent. Like, I think the two of them are hard to compare on some level because of they're different players, right? Like Sarah just has a different ability to match up in the post. Maybe I think she would probably be able to adjust perhaps more quickly to the physicality of the WNBA. We saw, all the newer women's basketball fans learn that women's basketball is in fact very physical and especially at the professional level when, Caitlyn Clark was allegedly being targeted. But you get the crap beaten out of you in that league. So yeah, I think Sarah Strong has maybe the physicality and the upside, like you mentioned, to be that player, especially with Paige's injury history, frankly. But it's not just a decision about on-court play. It's about Paige Bueckers is a celebrity. So I think that, we already heard that Dallas sold out their tickets because she's the projected number 1 pick. So I think you have to consider all the pieces of it. And that's why I think Paige would still go number 1.
That's totally fair. I want to comment really quick though on the Caitlyn Clark stuff, and then we'll go back to the debate, because to me, she was targeted, but it doesn't matter. You don't want to know why though, and you know why I don't care, because every time we're talking about a men's sports league, if a brash rookie comes into the league with a lot of cachet, they get lit up in football and basketball, and no one says anything. So right. I just want us to get to a point where we're covering sports as sports, because that's all it is. And Caitlyn Clark got railroaded initially because people were anointing her the next greatest thing, and she hadn't done anything in the league. She obviously had a great year, but she needed to pay her dues, and that's every sport, not just women's basketball. So
I have one piece of pushback on that, which is every time elite players come to the WNBA, that physicality's been there too, right? Candace
Parker, I
agree
with that too.
Clips of her getting knocked on her ass. So I think, it's less of a men's versus women's sport thing, is that this particular athlete had eyes on her at a specific moment. And that's what made it seem like targeting, when that happens with every rookie that's come through the league.
Yeah. But I will say one last thing is that, it's a lot of the coverage, and it's all good, but some of it is just weird. Like, I remember the reporter in Indianapolis that kind of like got suspended because he was kind of creepy with her. Like, that's what I'm talking about. It's like, just cover the game. But guess what? Basketball is physical. And it just is what it is. All right, back to the regular schedule programming. I loved Hannah Hidalgo's game. JuJu Watkins. Those are the 3 that I sent you as underclassmen. Sarah, the 2 of them. Like, you could make a case. Your point on Paige is 100% valid. If we're talking pure basketball skills, Paige is still considered the number 1 pick. But if you took away the business aspect of it, and I know it's not real, that's why we're having a hypothetical debate. Would you consider taking someone other than Paige, number 1, because of a couple of factors: injury history, potential for, if they're younger, they have more upside potentially, in your opinion, or no?
I think I'd still go Paige. I think my reason for that is also Paige has 5 years of training under Gina Auriemma on her belt. I think that Sarah Strong, the upside is there, but WNBA is a business where you win or you lose, and you got to turn over your rosters fast, right? So I think people want the best talent at that particular moment, and to me, that's still Paige. If we're talking 3 or 4 years from now, that could be a different conversation. But I think that that training, especially under an elite coach like Gino, who has coached several WNBA champions, that counts for something. And I think Sarah after this will somehow be even more better, which is incredible. But
Right.
that's where I think Paige still has the edge.
The scary thoughts are these three names as seniors: Sarah Strong, JuJu Watkins, and Hannah Hidalgo. What do you think they're going to look like in they're all, I think they're all different ages, but like when they're all ascending as they're rising juniors and seniors?
Oh, I think they're going to be elite. I think it's the new wave of WNBA talent. I think, I have this thought in my head that Hannah Hidalgo is like too small, but she always proves me wrong because she finds a way to just get her buckets anyway. So when I ever think about the transition to the pro game, I think about the physicality, right? And I don't think that necessarily will be an issue from my perspective for Sarah Strong. I think JuJu has experience kind of handling that physicality. I don't watch as much Notre Dame basketball to know how often Hannah is targeted as on the defensive end with that physicality, but I'm sure it's quite a bit, right? But she still finds a way to get her baskets. I think that her size is my only thing that would be a question mark for me in a league like the WNBA, to be honest. But at the same time, I haven't seen it be an issue, and smaller players have been elite before. So I think that they're all going to be tremendous talents in the WNBA.
No, I agree. I think sometimes the thought process of, and you're not wrong to think this, it's what we both probably go to is, looking at the physicality and looking at the player themselves and being like, well, I don't know if they can hold up. But then you have to remember, you're going to play professional basketball. It's essentially their job now, right?
Mm-hmm.
But as time goes on, you're going to the pros, and that's all you're going to do. So you take that seriously, get your body into a position where you're a lot stronger to take that pounding versus college where, your practice time is restricted, your, weight room is restricted, all that stuff. So once you're a pro, it's all on you to get better. And I tend to feel like Hannah Hidalgo and anyone that's of her stature that is going to be in the pros would kind of get themselves to that point. All right, last question. The reason why I feel Sarah would still be my number one. You've made some really compelling arguments. All I said was in my podcast, putting this together, is Paige would be one for me. And if I took Sarah, it would be the difference. I used a golf analogy. I know I'm a nerd. That if I hit a drive 300 yards and you hit a drive 301 yards, we're essentially the same, but there's like this much more. And the extra that I want out of Sarah is the lack of injury history now. Yeah. And I just think she's the future of what the WNBA will want. Positionless basketball, 6'2", has all of the skill sets. She's a shooter. She's a passer. She is a great leader already on the court. You can tell but that she's had basketball in her blood, as we talked about. Her parents have been involved in it. So I think that's the profile they're going to tend to start to look at, the pedigree. And that's the only reason why.
Yeah.
Do you agree, or are you still with Paige?
I mean, in this year's draft, I'm still Paige. Paige. But you can't go wrong with either player. Let's be honest.
No, you can't. And it's not a hate on Paige. I'm still waiting for. I'm getting those shoes, man. I 1,000% buying a pair of those shoes. So when I do, they're going to be right on that shelf back there, and people can stop calling me a Paige hater all of a sudden. It's just I'm just having some fun, guys. Daily content. Yeah. We're just having a good time. All right, T, tell everyone where they can find your stuff, and we'll let you get out of here.
Yeah, sure. So I write for The Next Hoops. I'm the Big East beat reporter, so you can find us on thenexthoops.com. I can be found on social media at MXTEE Baker, and I will be covering this weekend's game against USC. So look out for my analysis of that game on The Next.
Perfect. All right. Great to have you. This has been another episode of Locked On UConn. For T. Baker, I'm Mark Zanetto, asking you to stay locked on, stay connected, and honestly, let's beat those Trojans on Saturday. Actually, this is going to come out Saturday, so tonight, let's take them down. Go Huskies.